Because what you, the unsung heroes in the wastewater industry, do matters. Join me, Suzan Taylor, the Doo-Doo Diva, a longtime veteran of the wastewater, trenchless, and civil infrastructure industry each week as I deliver industry know-how from industry pros who know how. Whether you want to learn about the latest trends in technology, training and retaining great talent, sales and marketing, leadership and growth, or simply how to be more efficient, productive, or profitable, this podcast is for you. Let's dive in. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Doo-Doo Divas Smells Like Money podcast. Today, we are visiting with Bradley Mart, who is the CEO of Fogbusters. Now, I've passed that booth at the Wet Show, used to be the Pumper Show for many, many years, and I don't know why, but I never actually stopped to talk to you and find out what you were all about. I knew you had something to do with grease trap pumpers and people that serviced restaurants for that. But now Fogbusters has moved into another really interesting side of the industry. And so this is why I was very interested in having you on the show. But Bradley, give us a little background for those who may not be familiar with the company and its roots and where it's headed now as it relates to fog.
Thank you very much, Susan. It's really a pleasure to be doing this with you. I love the title of your company, your podcast. Just as a backdrop, Fogbusters, the technology was invented about 25 years ago in England. We actually still manufacture there. It was actually originally invented for the restaurant industry as an AGRD, which is an automatic grease removal device, basically a replacement for grease traps, and goes under the kitchen sink and extracts the oil from the water as it goes down the drain. So kind of a very rudimentary or simple version of what has become a much more sophisticated piece of equipment. So we've been in the United States for 25 years. We're in thousands of restaurants. Costco and Sam's Club have our technology in almost every one of their locations. If you go in and see the chicken rotisserie that everybody seems to know, if you look at the bottom, there's a little box there, and that's kind of our technology. So out of that, we started moving towards an industrial version of the technology that goes into mostly food plants. And so any plant that has wastewater that has oil in it. So obviously that's thousands and thousands of different types of applications. I can explain some of that if you want at that point, but that's a snapshot.
Right. And then there's that distinction that people need to know. There's the yellow grease and there's the brown grease. So if you can give us kind of that distinction and what you're working with this industrial technology.
So, it really depends on the type of plant that we're going into. And, you can put a nice coat on a pig and it's still going to be a pig.
Right.
You can only do so much to it, but a lot of the plants that we work with have used traditional DAF technology, dissolved air flotation technology. And, it's actually been around for a long time. And I think it was actually invented here in Berkeley, California at UC Berkeley. But that technology is pretty antiquated. It uses a lot of mechanical devices, skimmers, and air dissolvers, and a lot of chemicals like flocculants to coagulate the oil. And then it gets skimmed off, and historically that then goes into a landfill.
Right.
Whatever form it goes into the wastewater in, it comes out worse and then gets thrown away. One of our key value propositions is that our technology pulls the oil out of the water without adding any chemicals to it. Occasionally some foam suppressants, but for the most part, no chemicals at all. And as a result of that, it comes out in such a pure form, and I can go into what's actually happening, that it becomes yellow, at its yellow grease, and therefore has, at this day and age in the world of sustainable air fuel and sustainable marine fuel and biodiesel feedstock, has real value. At some point, I've seen it as high as 50, 60 cents a pound. Now I think it's closer to around 30 cents a pound. But we're taking something that was basically very expensive to throw away and turned it into a revenue stream while having a lot of other adjunct benefits as a result.
That's fantastic because, the land application, we are going to run out of places that we can do this, and we have to think about the environmental concerns. So, that was one of the things that kind of caught my attention in our first discussion about this was, especially from the municipal side in industry, there are people within a municipality and, wastewater sanitation district that are really responsible for helping their industrial clients meet their permit levels and permit compliance. And so that was one of the reasons I wanted to have you, come on the show, because this is something municipal compliance officers need to be aware of, because it could be a solution if they've got an industrial customer who is having some troubles with this and having troubles with compliance. Yeah. So I wanted you to talk a little bit about that as it relates to the industrial wastewater stream and how it can really benefit these industrial wastewater operations in meeting their compliance.
That's a super great point, Susan. And we have had multiple customers, but we're even working with one customer now in Oklahoma that was under closure notices because they have been, the municipality has been insisting that they become compliant, and they weren't. They were really struggling to be compliant, and so they had basically a cease and desist, and so they were really, their business was being threatened. And I don't remember how they actually came to us. I think through a wastewater engineer in the area. But we went through, because it was compared to what they would traditionally use, a new type of technology. Even though we've been in the market for a very long time, it was new to them. The state of Oklahoma had to hire a separate engineer to come and vet our technology, and came away saying, yes, go ahead and put it in. And so that's a perfect example of what you're referencing, is that we're helping the state of Oklahoma and our customer meet the standards that our customer needed to meet to be in compliance. But at the same time, the customer also benefits by not having to suffer the surcharges that are typically incurred when there's municipal discipline. And secondly, obviously, there's many other aspects to the financial benefits or savings that are resulting from our technology, plus the revenue stream from the creation of the yellow grease.
So how complex and large of a footprint is this? And what, if you're thinking about, okay, I could use this as a plant at my plant if I'm an industrial wastewater operator, what are they having to look at for equipment and bolting it on to a system?
So, we can go into a greenfield plant really easily. We did that with a big pet food company down in Texas last summer, not this one, most recent one, but 2023. But typically we're going into an existing plant. And our units, typically if we're shipping over our biggest units, and I would say that our biggest units are, up to 350 or 400 gallons per minute. On the small size, industrial versions are maybe 50 gallons a minute. But what we'll typically do is put them into two containers. So two 40-foot containers when we ship them over from England. So you can get a sense for the size. Mm-hmm. We might be 40 feet long by 10 feet wide and 12 feet high at our largest. We can gang them or in series or in parallel. We don't get that often asked that, but it's possible to do that. So, but they come on their own skids and ready to plug and play. Essentially, we basically build them there, to be able to fit into the container. They're on the skids, and so you don't really have to bolt them to anything. They're already bolted to the skid. They get pulled out and assembled on site. We pre-assemble them back in England and test them before we ship them out, then take them apart and ship them over and reassemble them. So we've had plants. We have a customer in Iowa that does 3 million pieces a day of pre-fried bacon. So you can imagine the fog that comes out of that. It's pretty substantial, and they actually pull out about 7 to 8,000 gallons a day of 7 to 8,000 pounds a day of oil from their wastewater. So they built an entire separate building just for our unit, but their ROI was under 12 months, and they had also compliance issues that were solved as a result of the Fogbuster technology.
So when you talk about that revenue stream for the oil, is that something that you help them connect with buyers for that? Or do they have to go out and source someone that might be interested in the byproduct?
It goes both ways. It's a very the pricing on fog on yellow grease is very variable, very much variable geographically. But we have helped customers before do that, and we can do that. Often they already are doing it themselves, or already in the know. Some of these companies are very big. Cargo would be one example of a customer we've had that has didn't even want to care to talk to us about what they were doing with it, but they were tanking a tanker car full every quarter of oil because of the fog buster in their facility.
Well, I can imagine without your unit, what they would have had to deal with for the treatment and the disposal of that. And just if you go out of compliance, and you can't get rid of it, start adding zeros to those fines. If
Yeah,
that's the way it goes. So does this actually have some other applications beyond industrial that you see? I mean, you had your roots in restaurants. Now it seemed like a natural progression. What's next? Do you see it as having possible municipal applications?
sure. Actually, we several years ago, we've actually been approached by a couple municipalities and have had conversations. The key thing is that we're fat oil grease remover, but we can't deal with sewage or all of the related. But still, that can play an important role. And normally, when we're working with an industrial facility in a municipality, their interest is in making sure that the fog isn't going down into the ground or into the wastewater that goes down the drain. But obviously, a municipality has much more to deal with. So normally, we're the first place that the wastewater comes when in a wastewater at an industrial complex, and that wouldn't necessarily be the case with a municipal discharge. So we're excited to work with municipalities at that level.
Because one of the big growing problems, and you're probably aware of this because of your start in restaurants, is the grease trap haulers are now, facing fewer and fewer places that they can offload what they pump from their customers. And so is this something that grease haulers themselves could have at their own facility to process from their customers that they have done the pumps from at restaurants?
That's totally on point. When we were early on in our development, so like 20 years ago, our technology wasn't sophisticated enough to handle that kind of brown grease. But we're at a point now where we have customers who are haulers, and they've put units into their facilities that are intended to process what they're extracting from restaurants and other places. So yeah, no, it's definitely an opportunity, and they're wanting to do the same thing. This vegetable oils and fog have become so valuable. People steal the oil from restaurants out of the back and whatnot. I'm sure you've heard that. And
I cook with some really high-end olive oils, and yeah, at your higher end restaurants, oil can, depending on the oil you use, it can be very, very expensive. So yeah, I could see that. I could see that.
Well,
So,
I mean, the oil that actually becomes usable for sustainable air fuel or biodiesel feedstock. I mean, that's at 50 cents a pound and it can be an enormous amount of money.
yeah.
So,
Oh, I'm sure. So is there anything else that you see that the industry as a whole needs to know about this technology or other problems that it can solve that they may have not thought about, or if they're facing a certain thing that maybe you can help them with?
Well, sure. So I appreciate your asking that question. So, fundamentally, the cost of extracting the fog using a DAF system means that you have DAF systems are operationally complex and require a lot of labor. They get overloaded and don't function very well, which ends up impacting all of the post-DAF processing, whether it's ponds or whatever. It breaks down a lot. It doesn't function easily. It needs a lot of attention. So typically our unit would replace or go ahead of the DAF and extract 98% of the fog that's in the water. That's a 3-tank system. The main separator, which is in the heart or the core of our technology, basically oil floats on water. It's lighter than water. And so we're basically putting a very slight hydrostatic pressure using a precise series of baffles and weirs inside the separation chamber and extracting the oil and causing it to automatically eject out. And then the processed water, the defogged water, then heads down the drain. The two other aspects of the technology are one, if there's a surcharge of oil, so typically we can process up to 30% of the oil in water, so oil to water ratio. But if there's more than that, we'll slow it down in our first tank and to make sure that when it enters the separation tank, it's a 30% maximum oil to water ratio. And then we have a final recovery tank so that if there's ever a super surcharge, like if there's a leak of some sort, we'll capture that oil and circle it back around to the first tank and capture it. We also have a solids removal technology that's a twin set of vertical augers that the wastewater comes through first and pulls any solids that are in the water out. And we can size the sieves in those augers to meet the demands of the customer. But really the key thing is we have improved fog recovery, improved fog quality, clean water going down the drain. We can get it down to under 100 parts per million, 100 ppm, reduce chemical usage, reduce labor usage. There's no moving parts except for the augers, which are optional. We have really no moving parts. There are no moving parts in our unit. And, again, it's it operates 24/7. We have full control systems that allow it to do what it needs to do. So there's the tipping fees, the sludge removal fees, the municipal surcharges all go away. It very quickly adds up to, can be an enormous sum of money and of great value to the municipalities. I'm running on so fast that
Oh, this is great. So if people want to know more about this technology and find out if it would be applicable for them, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, I can give you my phone number here.
Yes, please.
415-425-5590. We're headquartered here in North America in the San Francisco Bay Area. And my email is bradley@fogbustersinc.com. Just as a backdrop, you all know FOG stands for fat, oil, grease, but it was sort of a play on being in San Francisco Bay and Ghostbusters.
Right.
So Fogbusters, it's a memorable name. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Bradley, thank you for coming on the show and sharing your insights and information about this technology. And for those of you who tuned in, please reach out to Bradley if this is something that you would like to explore further. And again, thank you for tuning in to the Doo Doo Diva podcast. Really appreciate your viewership and your support. And so until next time, keep it flowing. Be sure to subscribe to the show so you'll never miss an episode. If you're an industry expert and would like to be considered as a guest on the show, click the Be a Podcast guest link below in the show notes for more information. Thanks again for joining me, the Doo Doo Diva, on this week's episode of the Smells Like Money podcast.